put it towards the purchase price. There's some people that have done that as an incentive to get the person to stay in the home. Right? Think about it. If you bought a home for $300,000, are there homes in California that are now worth $1 million that people paid $300,000 for? Yep. Absolutely. Now, will those people ever be willing to sell the $1 million home? Let's really say it's worth $1 million today. Are there people that would sell that home for $800,000? Okay, you say no. How many deals have you done in your life? Well, that's a first negative. So you're not a handful. Okay, so a realtor with a handful of deals says that never happens. Would anybody like to come up with another answer?
If you got a sale, you got a sale.
If you got a sale, you got a sale. So are you saying that there are people that will do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how many do you need if you're going to do one deal? You only need one, yes.
In my experience,
there's some, well, all you got to do is go on the internet and you can see that, okay? So there's people that will do anything. The point is that what you're doing is you're using your logic and putting your logic into their brain and talking yourself out of the opportunity that could exist for you. That's like going up to a girl at a dance and saying, "You don't want to dance with me, do you?" You're already ending it. So my point is, especially since you're just beginning, is to realize exactly, what's your first name?
Ken.
Ken?
Ken,
Ken, I have a team. Like Ken said, there's people that will do anything. And here's the situation. When I lived in Vegas, I bought a house on the street, and the house right next to it, the person that lived in it got to know the people living in this house. And they said, "Hey, the guy that bought your home that you live in, could I talk to him?" So I ended up talking to him. He bought the home for like $150, and then it was worth $500. He said that if he didn't have to deal with any realtors, and he could move out in it when he wanted within the next 2 months, he'd sell it for $350,000. Now, how much negotiating was there on my part? I said nothing to this guy except, okay. I couldn't negotiate. I couldn't ask him if he'd take less. I couldn't do it. And for me, that's just about impossible to believe. But I couldn't say, "Would you take less?" He's already given it to me, and I know I could sell it because I did for $500,000. Now, why would he do that? Say what you do. You don't have to think about it. Say what you said.
some people will do it.
Some people will do anything. The point is, trying to get inside somebody else's head to understand why they would do something, to me, is a waste of energy. What's the difference why anybody would do anything?
Motivation.
What's the difference what their motivation is? What is it that you really want to do? You want to do a deal. So if you try to understand why somebody does a deal, you're going to spend your time trying to find out why they do it. And in your situation, if your logic says to you they won't do it, you will basically talk people out of things that they'd like to do. And they will find somebody that says, "Hey, I'll do a deal with you." Versus, "Well, why are you going to sell that for so cheap? Is there something wrong with it? It's like buying a car that was in a flood. Was your car in a flood? Does it have an engine? Does it work? Do you own it?" And then all the list of concerns and worries, right? You hear people who say, "My gosh, if I can't drive by my home that I bought, I'm not ever going to buy it." Well, then you wouldn't be Dan. Because Dan needs a lot of gas money to drive to the East Coast to look at his property. It's a matter of philosophy. It's a matter of perspective. It's the way you look at things. Yeah? So I'm simply giving you suggestions from things that have worked for me. And my first suggestion is, never say, "That won't happen." Other than, your hair's going to grow. You're safe to say that. Yeah, but you could also win the lottery. But the same probability of winning the lottery, they say, is the same probability of getting hit in the head with a meteor when you walk outside of your house. So the only question you have to ask yourself is, when you open the door and you go out, do you look up? Because if you don't look up, then don't buy the ticket. Yes, it's possible. But in real estate, what you want is probability, right? And the probability of people doing transactions is across the board. There's no, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Because like you said, you only need one deal. Right? You're not trying to do 1,000 deals. You're trying to do one deal at a time, correct? Unless you're doing package deals. It's one deal. So you really only need one person that wants to sell and one person that wants to buy. And why they both want to do what they want to do, that'd be like going into a stereo store, and there's a stereo here that's $500, and there's one here for $5,000. And there really isn't that much of a difference, except the way they look. Well, why would somebody spend 10 times more? Why would anybody do anything? So I don't know if that helps at all. But my recommendation is try not to start to think that you have any idea what you're talking about. If you've only done a few deals.
What are the odds of you finding $150,000?
Okay, let's talk about odds.
I'm sure that a lot of it's better than odds.
Well, the odds were 100% because he called me. You know, it's like
Right, but how did it facilitate that? Or how?
exposure. I had bought one property, and this person next to him talked to him. Okay, I bought a property in Las Vegas, right across like a half a block from Wayne Newton's house, on this little side street. And the house was up for sale for $800,000, and they had bought it for $300,000 or $400,000. It was one of the older homes, and they wanted to sell it. Well, I went there with my family, and I said I wanted to lease purchase the home. And the wife was handling it because the husband had 2 heart attacks. And she said, you know, I just want to get a nice family in here. She took $6,000 down and lease purchased the home. Gave us time to fix it up, refinance it, pull out cash. And if you read the ad, you would say, well, she's not interested in lease purchase. It said all cash. So probability doesn't pertain to this business. Would everybody agree? The majority of deals we've all done are exceptions. I mean, really, think about it. Have you really done that many stereotypical, basic, normal, average, Joe Blow, Joe and Susie move in, perfect credit? I mean, really, there aren't that many of those. So all of your deals are against probability. And when you live in a world against probability, all of a sudden everything's possible. So for a new person starting out in the real estate business, what I recommend simply is not saying to myself, something won't work, but being open. And as everybody in the room can attest, you could probably all go through the list of deals you've done and say, yeah, well, that was an exception there, you know, that doesn't happen too often. Well, yeah, that one there, that doesn't happen too often. Well, the next thing you know, every single deal doesn't happen too often, except they all happen. You know, where did this person come from? One of the best things you have in a situation like this is networking. I spoke at a group, this was a classic, before I spoke here, and again, as Dan mentioned, there's some really negative stuff on the internet about me. And in the middle of speaking to the group, the third level of the group leader, right, the main guy was away, the second main guy was away, and the third person was there who really didn't even want to be there. So in the middle of the presentation, he's on the internet, sees some negative stuff, gets up in the middle of my presentation, and gets everybody to leave except 3 people. So that, you know, you're all gone, and it's just you 3. So everybody else here, Dan takes everybody and leaves. It's just you 3. So what do? I talk to those 3. Well, next thing you know, one of those 3 people are now working with me, consulting with me on some clients, because he is somebody similar to Dan. You know, Dan is level-headed, calm, probably never burned any bridges in his life. People like him. You know, you're comfortable with that guy. Versus with me, a lot of times people are scared. You know, he's a Sicilian New Yorker who doesn't seem to really give a shit.
That's true.
And it's true. You know, before. You know. And basically what I described it before is this is where I was and this is where my client was. And now this is where I am and this is where my client is. It's that simple. And the difference is that I went towards the philosophy of my father-in-law versus the philosophy of my father. My father was in the insurance and real estate business his whole life. And that's really where I learned the value of an annuity, meaning people are happy and they come back and they come back and they come back. They bring their friends, their kids grow up, they buy a home or insurance from you. But my dad only made $250,000 and my father-in-law made $6 million. So as a 20-year-old, what are you going to do? I went up to New York and worked with my father-in-law. But what I didn't realize is that his philosophy or his perspective was self-serving only, which isn't necessarily bad or evil or criminal. but you're thinking of yourself only versus